participant. We will now begin. I am Kim Jong-mo from Willog, and very nice to see you all.
So Willog is a company responsible for the cold chain transportation, and we are responsible for tracking systems when it comes to the monitoring temperature, humidity, and the impact. So we are to record what we have been observing from the transportation. So efficient monitoring solutions are available from our company. So we are a startup for this industry. So we have a new enforcement decree on biological products, etc., starting from July this year. So we are helping wholesalers and pharmaceutical companies to have the new system in place to fit for the compliance to this enforcement decree. It has been 2 years since we started our development, and now we are in the process of having the compliance with the new enforcement decree on biological products, etc. So we have our experiences working on the cold chain systems. I'd like to now show you what we have experienced so far. Having said that, I told you that we have the new enforcement decree on biological products, etc. And I wanted to title my presentation on the first experience of having this enforcement decree. And I was advised not to use the word first experience. So I changed the title into first step into the use of the enforcement decree of biological products, etc. And I would like to now show you what kind of trials and errors we have done so far, and after the implementation of the enforcement decree, what changes have been actually made, and also in the future, how we can effectively control and manage the cold chain system according to the new regulations. Now, first of all, when it comes to the biological products, in one word, it can be defined as a biological products that are including the blood and the formulations of the biological system shall have temperature recorded during the transportation, and record thereof shall be stored for 2 years. And that's the essence of this new enforcement decree. So the temperature tracker should be in place in order to have the transparent monitoring system of the products, and that is the aim we have in terms of implementation of this enforcement decree. So we have dual goals of having the services available to our clients. First contract was made with a client, and in that process I was observing the fact that our services were not detailed enough in the beginning. So that was our trials and errors. So we found three problems. When we made the contract with the contracting companies, we were in the meeting for the working level conditions, and about 10 people coming from the 10 representative companies were there. However, we were not able to finish our presentation because we were bombarded with questions. While answering to all these questions, I was realizing that the services we wanted to provide was not enough to cover all the needs of the customers, and we were not focusing rightly onto the target of the services needed by the clients. And also what kind of data log should be needed in the real-time situations that are needed by the client. So I really had to change our focus and the orientation. So I wanted to have the approach from the service perspective. In a sense, it can be understood as something that has many multiple perspectives. It is quite interesting to see that we should have the introduction of the temperature monitoring and the humidity management. And who need that? Authorities, yes. And the wholesalers in the pharma companies, they are controlling this, but actually they have to just report it to the authorities. So they want not just the introduction of the systems, but also the actual implementation of efficiency achieved through the monitoring system. They want you to have some kind of convenience in their system of using it without having too much burden on that. So they have to collect the data from the trackers. And if they are the transportation companies, they have to have the convenience improved for the delivery drivers. So the service is required by the authorities is one thing, and we also have the convenience to be improved for the sake of the users, who are actually the drivers of the distribution. Why we need that? Because in terms of the logistics industry, that can become the core of the whole tracking system. In Korea, we have the industry of the logistics, which is ranking 16th of the Korean economy. The transportation is actually smaller or lesser in ranking than the agriculture sector, which is 15th. So when it comes to this kind of industry structure, we have to serve the drivers for the distribution so that they do not incur many of the difficulties newly burdened for them, because those are mostly the elderly people when they are becoming the drivers for the delivery systems. And also for the sake of the operators and the pharmaceutical companies, if they have to add more burdens on the existing systems, they will want to be avoiding the systems. So they can have the new burdens of added processes by the wholesalers, which are mostly about the packing or packaging processes. So if you look at that closely, in order to ship 400 units of the packages, it took about 6 hours before. And in order to implement a new enforcement decree, if you want to add more processes to fill in the data required by the decree, they need 30 minutes more. And also, in order to have the electronification system, they would need 12 hours more than to this. So altogether, it will be just 12 hours for this. In the unit process, if you want to have the optimization of the processes, if you go through that system, it will be 6 hours and 30 minutes. So they have 1 hour and 30 minutes more added onto the systems. The wholesalers and pharmaceutical companies that we met wanted to have the focus on solving the problem of added number of hours. If we solve the problem of the monitoring time, maybe it looks like we have solved the problem, but as I said before, we have to add data logger, and also we have to have the right management of the transportation system. So we have to have 2 birds in one shot. So if we have the list of the things that we have to solve, and this is the time taken for each of them, so this is the time actually we need. So in the past, we didn't have to work on the temperature before the enforcement decree, so we couldn't add that step further. However, if you add additional manual, simple services, that will require 12 or more hours for the work operation here. Because in Korea, we normally have a practice of delivering 1 day after. So this is +1 of the order time. So the data logger should be collected afterwards. Therefore, we don't know when we can get the actual data logger. We are not sure if we can get the data logger available to us on the next day or not, or 2 days after. So we have to have the extraction of the temperature data. We have to map it, and we have to also to clear out all the systems out of the system wave, so that we can have the further processings later on. So it altogether combined, it will be 12 hours to work on that. So if we streamline the systems, we can reduce the time. So if we can add more of the processes, and we can reduce it down to 7 hours and 30 minutes. If we solve the problems of the packaging system, if we focus on the packaging only, once you have the cold chain systems, you have to add up more and more hours like these. But if you are focusing on multiple things to solve at a time, you can streamline the systems effectively. Now, if you look at the processes of shipping out the pharmaceutical companies by the operators and wholesalers, we have 4 stages. The first stage is to have the preparation of the delivery. They have the collection of the products, and then the data should be sent to the providers. After that, we have to have a picking process in the warehouses. The taking out of the products and the checking should be made. Also, after that, all these products should be packed in the packages. Then the last one is the shipping out. So we have 4 stages like this. So superficially speaking, we can say that we have the streamlined systems and the packaging system when we have effective adding in of the data. So if we just want to focus on the third stage, which is package only, thinking that this might be sufficing to have the data that time, it will inevitably add more time taken to the previous stages like stage 1 and stage 2. So what we have decided is to be effectively involved in all of these 4 stages. And we have to evenly distribute the optimization of the system so that we can have the better management of time. That is the real readiness for the enforcement decree there. So when we have the delivery made, data system will catch that data into the log, then we have the serial code number collected in the delivery time, and then the data logger should be collected together at the same time when we have the data log. And also digitalization will be available through the e-receipt, not in the paper form. So the electrification and digitalization will be required to have the easier collection of the temperature and humidity and the digitalization of the logistics at the warehouse level. So the whole process digitalization is required. So you should have the broadened horizon into the system in order to be more effectively catching up with the enforcement decree. And data logger that is proper for this is actually needed. So we have to think of the new ideas of the data logger that is really appropriate for our system. When I went to the clients told me something like this. We have our systems that is quite complicated, and when we do ship our systems and products, it is quite complicated. So you have to make us a very simplified form of the processes. And I said, yes, I can do that, and I made a button to start and control the system. In order to make a very convenient manipulation, I had a red lighting up on the screen and the LED form. So I made it available for them to control. And then we looked into the system going forward like this together in the demonstration. I was able to see that they passed through all these different and difficult processes at a time at the warehouse. First, what they do is to take the refrigerant, which is frozen for 3 days in the refrigerator. They have to wait until the refrigerant is workable at the distribution processes. And then they take the refrigerant in before putting the products in their system. And then they have to wait for 1 or 2 days. And then they just stack the product boxes onto the pallet. And also they have to wrap whole systems so that they can have the more streamlined shipping out processes. So you have a long process going through all these things. So if one unit is missed because they missed pushing the button only once, what happens then? Then the pallet will just unwrap the packages, and then from the container, the transportation containers, data logo for the temperature will be taken out. They have to measure it once again, and they have to put it back into the system, and then they have to restart whole serial systems. So I was asked and commissioned by the company to make a streamlined system, but what I had to really do was to eliminate all the initial processes like these. So what we have to provide with a multifunction data logger that can encompasses all the needed data. And then also they have to eliminate all unnecessary data points. Real-time monitoring can be their option. We have to check whether this is what they want. And also if the non-real-time system is what they want. What I mean here is that if we think of the efficient monitoring of the cold chain, they have to provide the data consistently to us without any cessation. That might be the first thing you think. There should be a series of the data. But in actuality, when you have the logistics, if it is in mountainous areas or remote areas, not in the urban areas, they have always 1 day to be added in terms of the delivery. So do we really need a real-time system in that case? And if it is a remote areas, can you really call the drivers back to you when there is a problem? If there is a problem, can you really call them and then ask them to be in here back in 1 or 2 hours? It's not possible. So you have to think of the actual circumstances of the units to be worked on. So that should be considered into the factor as well. Also, frequent and regular communications are required, meaning that there will be huge battery consumptions. And they should be charged and recharged every time, which is a big problem for the electrification system as well. So you have to have the battery recharged every time, and there should be some plug-in that you can just get the electrification. So the QR code was instead opted as an alternative to let you have the data collected from the place anytime, anywhere. So that has been my advertisement so far about my product and its features. Having said that, in order to have the better compliance with the cold chain enforcement decree, we had our preparations ready, made with the clients, and we took some 5 to 6 months of the adjustment period so that we can have the better use and conditioning of the systems. What I felt during that period of time is that there are so many hidden problems that were not visible beforehand. So this graph explains the hidden problems. So when we have the products moved from room temperature to the cryotic temperature, so when they have the drop of the temperatures, and then the right temperature was made before shipping. But somehow, without knowing why, we found that the temperature was rising up, and then it went down further gradually until the delivery time. So this was a problem we found, but this was not the only case. We had so many other cases when these problems occurred. I asked why. Is there a problem of the calibration of the thermometer? I asked, and I was wondering why. And I had analysis onto this problem. The reason it was as follows. The container was in the room temperature, and then it was put into the lower temperature environment. So do you think that instantly the temperature of the container comes down just like that? No, it takes time for the container to be cooled. That was not factored in before, so we didn't know this possible problem. Also, another problem was like this. After delivery, after 3 days, we thought that the return would be possible. However, sometimes return took more time than 3 days. After getting all the data points, we were able to realize all these hidden problems. So we were thinking of the conventional problems, and also we had the imperative to follow the new rules. So we were in a transitional period of having to solve these two problems at the same time. Sometimes we were ready, but our clients were not ready. The pharmacies or the clinics, hospitals were not ready. So we have to make sure that these clients are also ready to accept the products in their own systems. So now we have the new realization of having the reinforcement decree on the biological products, etc. So we believe that this was a momentum for us to accelerate the digitalization of the logistics. So it gave contribution to have the betterment of the system. But still, we have a long way to go. We have some hurdles to overcome still. As mentioned, when we have the distribution of the data, we have all other data scattered and available, and then we were able to integrate all the data. After integration of the data, then we wanted to monitor and manage the data integrated in the cold chain. So that became the foundation for the next step, which is going forward to the e-invoices and the electrification of the systems instead of papers. So now we're ready better. Still, we have some problems to be solved. We need to break away of our inertia, getting away from the conventional practices. We do have the systems, but system is one thing, but practice is another. Because some of our clients are so accustomed to using papers, and sometimes they wanted to have the seals impressed upon papers. Those people have the mindset not ready to accept our electrified systems. So even if we say that the e-invoices are available to you, they say, I want paper. And that's the end of our story of moving toward electrification. So we need to break away from the conventional practices. In order to have the systems in place effectively, IT alone will not be able to solve the problem. It requires the implementation assisted by the authorities, and also we have to have the better understanding about the QR code as well as the innovation and the needs of the logistics people. And also participation is required by all the stakeholders and the users and clients at the field. So 20 minutes is quite short as I feel it now. So it turns out that I'm just running out of time. So I hope that you can be a better user of cold chain, and I hope you can have a stabilized services and businesses thanks to this. Thank you very much.
오늘 테크니컬 세션 세 번째
Thank you very much. So for this third technical session, we will be dealing with the bio cold chain logistics, and I am the moderator of this session. So I am the professor of Sungyungan University. So unlike the conventional sessions, we actually begin our session with the opening speech by Willock manager. So we actually had the 4 presenters scheduled for this session, and among them, from the GCCLBL, Mr. Park Jong-soo, the managing director. I think that he was infected with the COVID-19, and because of that, he is unable to attend this event. So we will have 3 presentations. So the Kim Jong-mo, CTO of Willock, talked about and made his presentation about the revision of the guideline on the biologics. And he also talked about the present and future of cold chain. We still have 2 more presentations, so total 3 presentations. And after all the presentations are over, we are going to have some discussion session with little Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to raise your questions during the panel discussion session after all the 3 presentations are concluded. So Q&A will be about 20 minutes. So let's move on to the second presentation from the 18 Malone Mosque. Mr. Ian will give us the presentation.
And he's going to give us the presentation on the integrated approaches to the pharma and healthcare approach. Please, Mr. Ian Lee, please. Let's give him a big round of applause. Coming from far away.
안녕하세요. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here today and for your time to listen to our presentation. My name is Ian Lee. I'm the head of reefer development for Asia for the AP Moller Maersk Group. So you might know or have heard of Maersk as a very large container shipping line. Of course, that is the core of our business. We ship containers from point A to point B. In fact, 1 of every 5 containers shipped globally around the world is a Maersk Line container. This extends as well for refrigerated containers or reefers. Likewise, 1 of 5 refrigerated containers around the world are shipped with Maersk. So this becomes very important, especially in the pharma and healthcare industry, especially given the changes in the supply chain as we have seen in the past 2 years with the advent of COVID-19. In the same way that supply chain for your own companies are changing, we ourselves at Maersk needed to adapt and change to these challenging environments. So back in 2018, even prior to the pandemic, Maersk had a vision to change just from a container shipping company to a supply chain company focusing on integrated end-to-end solutions. This is in fact what is needed actually today in the same pharmaceutical industry, because as an ocean carrier, we are very limited to serving the needs of the industry. But in serving the entire supply chain, then we could address the challenging complexities that we are faced today. So while other shipping lines might be purchasing more ships or more containers, we of course still focus on that, as that is our core business. You might have heard in the news that we are also investing in supply chain related activities. In Poland, we recently launched a pharmaceutical warehouse. We're also investing in intermodal solutions such as trucks. And we've also acquired relevant companies. Here in Asia, you might have heard that we have an intended acquisition of LF Logistics. And on the other side of the world, for example, we've acquired Senator and Performance Team. So the aim of Maersk now is not just to ship containers from point A to point B. The aim is now to connect and simplify global supply chains. And likewise, this is the change that is needed in the supply chain of pharmaceutical industry today. So while before the conversations with customers centered around what is the freight rate from Busan to LA, today, when we sit down to the customers, the idea is that we partner with you guys and the companies to understand your supply chains. It is this dialogue that is needed today because each supply chain solution is very different. Each of your own companies have very different challenges across the supply chain. You can see here that there is a lot of players in the supply chain by itself, from packing and storing the goods, to trucking, to ocean or air freight or rail that you might be using. You have different regulations in origin countries and destination countries that you need to deal with, as well as distribution at the end for your end customers. So the aim is to just simplify this, and we act as one integrator. It's not just talking about reaching out to one person. It's also so that we have a better control and visibility of the entire chain. With one actor having full visibility of the chain, we not only have greater control, but we're also able to mitigate risks. In that sense, our interactions have actually increased in the past 2 years in the advent of the pandemic. We've had increased discussions with the pharma industry, especially the global top 10 pharmaceutical companies. So in these dialogues, we realize that there is a need to change the way we work internally as well. In that sense, we've ensured that operational process along the supply chain and cold chain of Maersk is GDP compliant. So one of the biggest efforts that we've done, which was not there previously, is that now we have a quality management department. This one is focusing solely on pharmaceuticals, and a quality manager mapping out each of the processes along the way. Of course, we are more focused on container movement, as that is our core product, shipping via ocean. One challenge of the pandemic as well, if you guys are in supply chain that you might have heard, is that there is no container, or there's difficulty booking a container, or if you've booked a container, that container might not be able to get on the ship because of so much demand and changing global patterns across these 2 years. And that is the unique value proposition that we offer as an asset owner of the largest fleet in the world, with the largest reefer container fleet in the world as well. Not only can we assure space and equipment, we also have the visibility to mitigate operational risks, as we know the challenges that are posed today. You might have heard of the Panama Canal incident, or terminals being congested, or truckers' strike. I think there was one recently. So all of these, being the asset owner, we have greater control. So apart from owning the assets, now we talk about technology and how that is now integrated in the supply chain. I think you might have heard other talks about how data loggers are very important now, so that there's visibility on temperature across the cold chain. In this regard, actually 96% of our reefer fleet has a remote container management device. This device allows transmission of temperature performance of our reefer containers, and this is visible via our Captain Peter platform. You simply log on the website and you will then get the temperature graph, full visibility at your fingertips. Not only that, these reefer containers are GPS equipped, so you need not worry or wonder where your containers are, whether they're at land or at sea. With this technology today, we've partnered with our customers to have trial and risk assessment lanes. Moving from air to ocean is a new trend that we've seen in the supply chain for pharmaceuticals. Of course, air freight has been the dominant mode of transport for medicine. But in the past 2 years, we've also seen that ocean is now being a viable option, given the challenges and the costs of air freight. So now we partner with our customers to have trial and risk assessment to ensure that this movement from air to ocean is up to the standards that they desire and that we can deliver. While we set this course to be the integrator of supply chain, there is also a need in the industry to also take care of the environment and move medicine in a sustainable way. And in that part, we have also set a course for net zero emissions by 2040. This is actually an advanced target. The industry is setting a course at 2050, and internally in Maersk, we're being ambitious. Shipping by itself is responsible for 833 million tons of CO2 emission in 2021. Now, our aim is that by 2030, we reduce these emissions by 60% compared to the baseline of 2008. So what are we actually doing to reach this goal of net zero emissions? I think I'm very excited to share that while I'm speaking right here now, 13 methanol vessels are actually being built by Hyundai here in Korea. The first one is actually going to be launched next year, and the following 12 will be available in 2024. While of course we invest in hardware, which is these green vessels, we also had the challenge of then securing sustainable fuels. So we've also been exploring biofuels, green methanol, and green ammonia as sources of fuels so that we can ensure that we're not only green in the hardware, we also have green supply in terms of fuel. We're also trying to push regulatory frameworks. The Paris Agreement actually does not encompass shipping in terms of carbon emissions. And that's why we're also here trying to promote that we also take a look and be aware of how our supply chain can impact the environment. Of course, as we delve, we've also done investments apart. We're also now investing apart from ships. I think I've mentioned that we're also going into other modes. For air freight, we are just starting. We're new and entrant in this, but we are starting. And that in the same light, by 2030, we're aiming to use 30% biofuels when we use air freight. For intermodal, very specific in terms of trucking, we've purchased 126 new electric trucks in the USA, and we're hoping to do more. Lastly, again, in the containers, we have over 600 vessels plying the globe. We've started ordering 13, but every new order will be on a green vessel. It will take time. It is an ambitious target, but we're there to set course. If I refer back a while ago when I talked about the pandemic with the challenges on air freight and the cost of air freight and supply during the pandemic, that is when actually a lot of companies took the discussions with companies like us to move from air to sea. As you can see, air freight is responsible, is one of the highest carbon emission sources. So apart from just the benefits of cost and answering the need of another alternative mode of transport in supply chain, moving from air freight to ocean also helps reduce carbon impact. Now I want to share some case highlights. Actually, this is very specific to the Korean market where we were working with 2 Korean companies the past 2 years. They reached out to us to explore the idea of ocean as a mode of transport. And in that regard, I think the main aim was to make the pharmaceutical products available at the destinations because of the challenging times of air freight. I think the other bonus of that is that there was an estimate reduction of 40 to 60% in their transportation costs by moving from air freight to ocean. I'm not saying that this is for everyone. Of course, there are pros and cons with the transport mode that you pick. Air freight is, of course, very fast. Ocean takes a longer time, right? But in this, I think we were very successful. We handled the stuffing of the goods in the container, trucking them to Busan and Incheon, mapping the journey out, showing that via ocean, that cold chain is actually protected, powered by our Captain Peter technology to give assurance to our customers. Then the goods were discharged in Rotterdam, and we also took care of the trucking to the final destination of Italy. So I just wanted to share this with you guys. I think the session is about holistic pharma, and what does that encompass? It encompasses integration in the supply chain. It encompasses dialogue between companies like us and companies and customers to design a new solution, be open-minded to new ways of working things, integrating technologies today, and how that can help you in your supply chain, also keeping in mind the impact of the activities to the environment. So with that, thank you so much for your time. It has been a pleasure to be here.
예, 감사합니다. 우리 AP문으로
Thank you very much. So that was the presentation on end-to-end shipping network, as well as the approaches to healthcare industry from the shipping industry perspective. So with that, I would like to thank the presenter for this great presentation. Moving on, we will invite the third speaker from market. We have the Nina Vaz, VP of the Global Clinical Trial Distribution Services. So the Vice President will talk about how to overcome supply chain complexities for the storage and distribution of cold chain biologics. So please welcome her with a big round of applause.
So good afternoon, and thank you for welcoming me back today. For those who I haven't met earlier, my name is Nina, and I represent Mark in a UPS company. We specialize in cold chain storage and logistics, serving companies in life science. I'm going to focus a little bit on vaccines today as a case study, but in terms of the evolution of healthcare is here, and the transformation of the clinical trial landscape has shed light on operational weaknesses of conventional models and forced the industry to adapt through agility and innovation. Strategic storage and distribution are pivotal processes, and in the orchestration of delivering life-saving treatments to patients throughout the pharmaceutical industry, from clinical right through to commercial. So critical time and temperature requirements, as well as quality standards, chain of integrity management, and regulatory hurdles will factor in its identifying the optimized approach for each unique clinical trial, as there is no one-size-fits-all solution. And I'm really honored to have listened to the previous two presentations from my colleagues. So understanding those challenges from a temperature control perspective, the changing dynamics of air to ocean freight from Ian a little bit earlier as well, really makes you appreciate that we do need to listen to each other, to the industry, to our colleagues, and really, think about the next solutions that we put in place. So as I mentioned, today we'll discuss a little bit of the challenges, particularly related to vaccines, but I'm learning today and continue to learn and appreciate questions that we'll have and share together at the end. So a part of the industry in clinical trials, I'm certainly honoured to have been supporting COVID vaccine trials and treatment since the early onset of the pandemic. A couple of facts and figures in vaccines. So, we've dosed 5 billion individuals across the globe. This data is correct as of April 2022, so we're, certainly moving. What does it mean? It means that we've really supported delivering individual doses across multiple countries, and the challenges that you face with it, both through the clinical and the commercial network. And what are the challenges we face? So in any new vaccine development, there's a lot of complexity. What does it mean for storage and distribution? How do we ramp up our local and regional storage? Thinking about where is the central manufacturing taking place? Is it regional, or is it in fact local? Are we having challenges in particular continents such as sub-Saharan Africa, where it's very difficult to reach? So the major challenges, summarise clearly. It's not just about the local regions or the centralised manufacturing, but really understanding the equipment and the technology transfers involved. And then what does the supply chain do in parallel to that? So how is your supply chain partner supporting you? Do they understand your locations of your manufacturing sites, your final destinations, as well when it comes to clinical trials, your patients themselves? So one of the things we've seen in the last couple of years is the unprecedented number of clinical trials and how rapidly they're coming. So they've definitely changed the landscape overall. Again, the same question that I asked previously is, how can your supply chain support you? Does your chosen partner have those capabilities of storage where you are in terms of your origin, storage at your destination, having the transportation, the temperature equipment and insulated shippers in terms of phase change or active solutions? We heard about the dynamics of understanding, what happens if something goes wrong a little bit earlier today. Where is your risk mitigation and planning, your lane mapping, etc.? Really understanding those different elements. From an industry challenge, I need to just go back in particular, clicking too fast. What does it mean in terms of drug development timelines? So over the past 2 years, we've definitely seen that the COVID vaccines development has been accelerated phenomenally. Previously, the average time to develop a vaccine would have been approximately 10 years. And COVID-19, it was approximately 9 months, so a vastly different timescale. So having the ability to onboard trials rapidly in a number of weeks has become critical to success. Speed itself, in general, is key. But also having that patient-centric focus as the evolution of drug development continues to shift to more patient-centric, direct, decentralized paradigms, and providing solutions that are focused. So what's key then is advancements in innovation and technology, and a combination of the two to find an end-to-end solution for storage and logistics. So when choosing your supply chain partner, it's really critical to understand those challenges. So here we have a small summary. I think we've really absolutely touched upon it through multiple presentations today, but just to run through in summary. So understanding your cold storage, and it's not just at your origin in terms of your manufacturing site. It's so critical that you have the understanding of your cold storage at the point of use. Now, whether that be the hospital or the pharmacy itself, in terms of a clinical trial, or the patient, if you're choosing a decentralized model, does the patient have the ability to store the vaccines in the appropriate storage conditions, or are they expected to have immediate use? We've touched upon, again, through the course of the conference today, temperature control packaging and transportation, as well as temperature monitoring. So what does that mean? everything from RFID to just standard passive loggers that you can download manually at the point of distribution. And really encompassing that final mile delivery so that you understand, the different types of transportation. We could start with ocean freight, as Ian discussed today, if we've got that time and it's, a different step in the process. When we're talking about clinical trials and patients, actually, we know that, there's certain limitations. Predominantly, the pharma industry has moved by air, and it still continues to be the path of preference. But, thinking about standing here today with you in Seoul, a lot of our distribution is very local. So, actually, we're thinking, again, it's not traditional air freight. It's not the alternative ocean freight, clearly, but we're looking at more direct solutions. Really understanding, do we need a direct drive? Are we able to do something that those of you familiar with some terminology may be used to as a milk run, where you're able to have a temperature control vehicle that's able to drop off at multiple points? So thinking about, is it going directly to patient? How do you reduce the burden from them? The patient themselves doesn't want to have to be responsible for disposing of packaging material, or even from a sustainability perspective, even if it's recycled, that they have to bring it back to a different point in order to be able to return it to the original user. So some of the things that we need to consider in parallel is the ancillary supplies that are required for a temperature-controlled IMP shipment in terms of the clinical trials. We've talked an awful lot about the drug product itself in terms of the finished goods, that we need temperature monitoring, that we need to understand the risks, complete lane mapping, and choose the best mode of transport and storage, whether it's centrally, regionally, or locally. But the other thing we need to consider is the different types of temperature requirement. So for vaccines in particular, because we're focusing on that for the purposes of the exercise today, through COVID-19, what we've seen is because products have come to market so rapidly in terms of development, there was a rapid expansion in -70 storage requirements in particular, versus from a commercial perspective, I think traditionally we would see vaccines stored and shipped at 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. So really understanding what is my tipping point in terms of the different temperature requirements. Is it 2 to 8? Is it -20 and -70? And how rapidly do my strategies for each of those 3 temperature conditions change? So as we focus and pull together on those requirements, what is key for cold chain shipping? Absolutely, number 1, temperature storage and temperature packaging. So making sure that you have the right solution that fits your individual quantities and your storage requirements. We've talked about monitoring in general, but thinking about being dynamic, having that full visibility and assurance through your supply chain. GPS, I think, is absolutely key to end success. The combination of being able to change requirements using global air freight, using direct drives in terms of road, and where manufacturing is upfront, and we've got that capability, large volume and time, potentially ocean too. And then thinking about the end customer. So how do I make sure everybody's fully informed? Having things like customer command centers where we can provide real-time visibility. So GPS monitoring is one step, but actually adding that layer of complexity, communication, and understanding those key requirements. And we talked about the different storage conditions. So with the increase in the -70 through the last 2 years in particular, how is that transported and translated? It's leveraging dry ice, for example. So knowing that you have adequate dry ice throughout your supply chain is key to success. We talked a little bit about the 3 core storage conditions in terms of cold chain. So 228 is absolutely prevalent, I think a standard storage condition that's readily available. I'm very proud that it was part of a network that at the onset of the pandemic, not only did our leader and president, Ariette van Strien, have the foresight to think ahead, but she allowed my team and I, who are responsible for our GMP network, to really invest in ultra-frozen storage. She gave us permission to install and purchase 240 ultra-low freezers, and we did this from Singapore to Argentina and everywhere in between, and very rapidly in a space of 2 months. So one of the comments I had back from a particular sponsor that we supported through clinical trials, they said, you know, Nina, we came to you because we needed -70 storage and support. What we didn't anticipate was your level of expertise. Because it's one thing buying a freezer, you know, so when you think about your supply chain partner, but it's a whole other part to actually install it successfully, qualify and validate it, but then ensure that your team have the experience of how to use the equipment, you know, that they know when to open and close freezer doors, that they understand the complexity of if a freezer goes out of spec, what the next steps are. And also, you know, in terms of lessons learned, that if they do have a challenge, how do they overcome it in terms of finding a solution and rapidly communicate that back to you. Investigations, of course, with any global quality management system are a given, but those effectiveness of the root cause analysis and then the final preventative actions in terms of the conclusion are critical in terms of having a network that's robust that you can rely on, not just one day, but every day. So what do we need to do to be ready? We need to be able to be prepared to have an accelerated startup time. So being able to set up a clinical trial within a matter of weeks, not months as previously required. The experience and knowledge is key. So it's not just about having the ready network in terms of storage and logistics. I think that's almost a given, you know, across supply chain providers. But it's the team themselves. It's having that experience and knowledge, working with you and asking the key questions so that you provide a solution, an operating model that's really tailored to the individual protocol, understanding whether there's a centralized, a regional, or a local strategy, or actually a combination of the three, and then having that ability within your protocol to write in those strategies. So within your clinical trial protocol, something that we're absolutely recommending today as a team is to include a decentralized element as well as the traditional direct-to-site element. And what it will do is it will just allow you to flex in the event something shifts in the world again. So having that ability to be agile, to pivot, and then underlying that, the overall resilience of having multiple options available to you. So those flexible distribution strategies, you know, it's not just from a pure logistics perspective or a storage perspective, but even from a clinical trial protocol design. So having those contingency plans in place. So to sum up, how do we make sure that we have the overall together? So we need to have an operating plan that's viable, tangible, completed risk assessment, so understanding where the collection sites are, the start of your supply chain, which gateways are you using, and then the final destination. And one of the things that, you know, we talked about previously is then having that overview in terms of communication, and that's really where command centers and communication plans come into place. In the event that your supply chain is disrupted for a number of reasons, flights cancelled, actually patients are not available on the given date in terms of their visit schedule, you need to be able to rapidly pivot and provide an alternative. So this is my last slide, and to sum up in conclusion, I think we've talked about the risks through the cold chain supply chain. We've talked about the changing landscape in terms of the temperature conditions for storage and distribution. what's key is having those strategies outlined, but also alternatives available, so that you really have a temperature-controlled storage and logistics solution that can be adapted to the differing needs of your individual products. Having those risk lanes mapping and being able to understand the supply chain in its entirety. So not just focusing on one leg of the journey or one step, but knowing that end-to-end solution, encompassing your centralized strategy, your regional and your local, thinking about your risk lane planning, your communication tools, and overall listening to the market and hopefully trying to anticipate any potential challenges that come your way. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today, and I'll hand back and welcome any questions.
네, 감사합니다. 우리 마켄의
Thank you very much. It was Nina Vess of Marken for the wonderful presentation. So the complexity of the cold chain for the pharma product should be overcome. In what ways, according to her presentation? We wanted to have a panel discussion separately, and I found that there is a misunderstanding of my programs, so we will not have the panel discussion for now, but instead we are going to have a Q&A session so that we can answer your questions from the floor. We will now open the floor. If you have any questions, please raise your hand, and our staff will give you the microphone. Any questions to the presenters? I don't see any hands up. As you might have felt already so far for the last couple of years or 3 years, we were known to the new vaccine strain, the mRNA, in terms of the going against the COVID-19. And we were interested in knowing more about the cold chain in terms of the transportation and also biological products, etc. Law had the new enforcement decree, which is affecting not just the pharmaceutical companies, but also many other stakeholders. Now all the business people in this industry should have the refinement of their businesses for the transportation on the storage of the biological products. Now we had our discussions in this session to overcome these challenges and future changes. So depending on where you are, you must have been getting the useful information. So thank you very much for staying out until the end of the day. Thank you very much.